Hello there, good evening, and welcome to Blather 181. Um, God, the Shitestorm, or simply put, Shitestorm. It's not a reference to, let's say, the bidet government, which is probably part of it anyway, or the shit show of the Russians in Ukraine. Oh, it's part of the thing. No, and it's definitely not a reference to Hillary. I don't know whether to refer to the Hag of Chappaqua or the storm in the Pacific. Both of them are destructive. Uh, no, it's a reference to the worldwide shitestorm. And we're going to be talking about that with Thomas. But of course, first, a little bit of the introduction I'm doing lately. If you are new to this, please click on subscribe and notifications. And if God gave you money and the willingness to help those who are determined to preserve liberty, uh, click on join and join this channel as a member. The lowest range is $2.50 per week. And frankly, the next 2 hours are going to more than justify this week, anyhow. That said, money makes the world go round and the channels broadcast. Welcome to Beer Blather. This is Saul Montes-Bradley, the largest human repository of useless information from still my golden cage in Florida, and pulling a disappearing act just recently on my left, and now going poof, is Thomas Wictor, the only living expert in World War I flamethrowers. And what can I say? He is in California, uh, Southern California, where a tropical storm is barreling in, and the kind of shit that we shrug off in Florida as, oh, look, more rain, has the potential of being quite destructive there. It appears to me, the way he just left us, that there might be electricity problems there. If his electrical was cut off, I'm going to be left holding the candle here. So I'll try to do my best while we see if Thomas can join us again, hopefully soon. Um, these are the problems when you have a live broadcast. Anyway, we were discussing with Thomas yesterday things that were going on around the world. And yes, of course, I forgot to say, this is being broadcast simultaneously in our channel in Odyssey, in our channel in uh, Twitter, now X, but still Twitter, and in YouTube, where we are going to leave momentarily, as frankly, we don't like YouTube. So when Thomas comes back, uh, we'll leave YouTube. So, what a shit show out there. I don't know how much of the news you follow.
I'm back.
Hello there. How are you? You know that I was telling folks that we should expect shenanigans because being in Southern California, well, the storm is something that in Florida we kind of shrug off as, oh, look, a little water. Over there, it has the potential for severe disruption, including electricity. Did you just have, uh,
Yep.
uh, uh, yeah, so,
Internet outage, and it was system wide. It's back again. Are we hearing thunder, Tim?
No, I have to close the door.
Huh. Yeah, I can't tell if we're hearing thunder or not, but
it
anyway,
may be your neighbors having beans.
I don't know. I just don't know what's happening in this neighborhood anymore. So Anyway, I'm back, and you were talking about Hurricane Hillary.
Yes.
She's been downgraded, and
Well,
initially yeah, exactly.
it's
She couldn't even be
Hillary.
a hurricane anymore, but she's a mere tropical storm, and we were supposed to get rain tonight. Now they're saying rain tomorrow morning.
Yep.
You know, they're never right about the weather here, so they can
And I
predict.
was watching. Yeah.
They can predict weather 100 years from now, but they can't predict weather today or tomorrow. So
No,
just
no, or next week. They were predicting a very bad commute on Monday. No
yeah,
shit,
yeah.
Sherlock. It's commute on Monday.
No, I mean some places were going to get 15 inches of rain in 1 or 2 days. We had a torrential rainy season, and I took this plastic bin and I set it out just to see how much rain would fall, and I collected well over a foot net. It was about 14 inches of rain. So
Oh, nice.
the weeding, oh my God, I'm a garden maniac now, and the weeding is just so annoying. Finally killed all the grass, but the weeds, you got to keep track of them. So I go on weed patrol every Monday now. um,
I can imagine you all dressed in green with boots and a farmer's overall and a shotgun chasing weeds.
no, it's my father was a lawn, um, whatever is one step after aficionado, and I once went out and I found him crawling around the yard on his hands and knees, and he had a little tiny bottle of weed killer, and he had an eyedropper, and he was individually zapping
Oh,
little dandelions and things like that.
yes.
And I swore that would never be me, but I'm pretty much like that with the weeds in my succulent beds. I have one, two, three. Wait a minute. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 succulent beds, and I have to go on weed patrol every Monday and pull those weeds out, because
Yeah.
you can't really go out into the middle of the succulent bed. You have to lean over,
Right.
and so it's I hate doing it. I know some people
Me,
love.
I don't have your father's patience. I nuke the motherfucking weeds. I use a backpack with 4 gallons of weed killer, and there are selected weed killers to kill specific types of weeds and not others. And I just you know pan the field, and for 6 months I don't have a problem after that.
Yeah,
Takes about 2 weeks for the weed to die.
about 3 or 4 people have brought in dirt, soaked it in herbicide, let it sit, soaked it in herbicide, let it sit. And after a couple of years, and implanted brand new, sod.
Right.
But after a couple of years, they've got weeds. So I
Yeah.
mean, the seeds are crapped out by birds, and
Oh,
they're
yeah,
pulling it.
they're all the time.
Yeah,
Every creature. I remember my first flower bed in Virginia. I dug all the soil for about 1 foot, and then put a plastic barrier, and then new sod imbibed in weed killer. And for about a year, I was fine. Then it started growing again because every single fucking critter is carrying those seeds around.
yeah.
So, now once a year I nuke them, and the one that gives me the greatest pleasure is poison ivy.
Hmm.
I love to see poison ivy die. It's a personal thing I have with it.
Sure. No, we have a palm tree that's decided to start growing between two bricks. So probably tomorrow I'm going to take the bricks out and yank that thing out, because the problem is that the tap root is as deep as what you can see, and
Yeah.
a bird crapped out the seed to a palm tree. So if we let it go, I mean, we'd have a full size palm tree in the front yard.
I'm sorry. I just had the image of a seagull shitting a coconut.
Well, California, Southern California, has evolved land gulls. These are former seagulls that don't go back to the water because they're getting all the food they can eat from the garbage
From the
and
piers.
people.
Yeah.
So they've been tracking them, and we're on the third or fourth generation that has never been to the ocean.
They're like
So-
Democrats. When they start receiving free stuff, they never leave.
They never leave. Yeah.
Yeah, it's democratic lazy gulls.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's eerie. It's eerie how quickly evolution happens, just in terms of animals and people and plants, and it's all based on the environment, and it's not. There's no mystery to it. If you're not evolved for the environment, you die, and you're replaced by the ones that are evolved, usually mutations. White people are. I mean, one of the most. Nobody truly knows the true origin of humans, of Homo sapiens sapiens. It used to be the theory that we evolved. We came out of Africa from one.
Yeah, from the savannah.
Yeah, the earliest skeleton they found was named Lucy. But there's emerging evidence that we may have evolved concurrently in several different places at the same time, and that's considered a racist theory. To me, it's just a theory. It's no more racist than one or the other.
It's just a theory, and by the way, when you read all there is to read about it, it's quite an interesting theory, and the notion that we evolved from different groups of primates, more or less at the same time, but not necessarily at the same time. I don't see any problem with that.
No, and
except when you go to the history to the DNA of language.
Yeah,
because then you see that there is an area just south of the Caucasus that about 8 to 10,000 years ago was a point of origin of all the Indo-European and Indo-Oriental languages, from China to Portugal, from India to Norway. And you can follow migration patterns by following the use of language.
yeah.
It's very, very interesting.
No, it's all of this is just interesting to me. But everybody is proprietary about this stuff, especially. I saw a documentary years ago, and it posited that Europeans. There was a period during which the Atlantic froze over in the very, very, very north, and so essentially people. They boated and they walked over the ice from Europe and arrived on the east coast of the United States right about the same time or a little later than the people crossed the Bering Strait.
Yes.
And came on the west coast, and they sort of met in the center and intermingled because
and the Okinawans in Peru.
Yes, and they used to say that Neanderthals were wiped out by Cro-Magnons, and now they believe that they interbred with Cro-Magnons.
Oh, come on. Take a look at John Brennan.
There's a lot of people.
Neanderthal is amongst us. Just take a look at Brennan with a 45-degree forehead.
Yeah. So all this stuff. This is why I always say that there's no such thing as science. There's only scientists.
Yes. There
Um,
is a scientific process. And by the way, somebody here says, not the first time we hear it, evolution is a theory. Well, so is gravity.
yeah. No,
I
evolution.
suggest people start questioning the theory of gravity by jumping off of balconies.
Well, I mean, also, I mean, I've seen the gulls. I've been here off and on since 1969. We didn't have gulls here in 1969. Now we have gulls, and these
Mm.
gulls have evolved to become landlocked birds. They've evolved. That's all there is to it. They
Yes.
weren't made as land gulls. They didn't have a force suddenly say, there, now you have
No.
land gulls. They
But,
evolved
but
from. So,
let's face it, the garbage bins in the fish processing plant is a hell of a lot easier than trying to grab your own fish.
and also, they gulls don't have any natural predators here. There's a what do you call those? What do you call the hawk and eagle family raptors? There's raptors,
Yes.
but the raptors tend to go after the pigeons. You don't see. I mean, gulls can put up a hell of a fight, but gulls are targeted by sharks, and so there's no sharks out here. But I have no problem.
No, because all of them are in the School of Law at UCLA.
Yeah, I mean, people are free to believe whatever they want to believe, but when it becomes a problem is when you can't talk without somebody correcting you and saying, it's just a theory, and whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, just listen.
It's
I
just a theory. Blow me is just a statement.
I don't fight with when people tell me that they're creationists or they believe in intelligent design or just whatever. I don't say that. I just listen. So
I don't give a shit. Listen, you and I believe, and I believe is one of the reasons that we that our conversation survive the test of time. We are true libertarians when it comes to these things. In this sense, not in the sense of Ron Paul or that shit. They're not.
no.
Everybody, we respect everybody's right to develop themselves without malice and without evil in any way they want. What you believe takes nothing away from me. I don't give a shit what people believe in. I don't need to convince them of anything. I don't need to correct them in anything. It's people just like me. Maybe they're wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Who gives a shit? I love the exchange of ideas as much as I despise the imposition of ideas. Somebody wants to believe in the watchmaker theory of the world, intelligent design, knock yourself out. What is it to be? You have every right to believe that theory over others. Maybe over time you'll change your mind, maybe you won't. Who gives a crap? I cannot stand people who try to impose their ideas on others.
Well, I mean, the problem. I mean, we see that we're basically going to talk about it tonight. All the world's problems stem from people trying to impose their ideas on others by force. And, I watch a lot of police shows, and you wouldn't believe the number of murders that happen because they began with an argument. And they began with an argument over things. I mean, whether there's
important.
It's pointless to have an argument about something that can't be resolved.
Listen, how many thousands, if not millions, of people have died on this planet over whether, uh, 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 I don't know, Jesus is God, the Son of God, one in the triune head of God. I mean, give me a break. Why
Well,
should people kill themselves over that?
Ramzan Kadyrov, I mean, he's off his rocker.
Yes.
He's druggy. He's a drunk. But he said that after Russia defeats Ukraine, they're going to move on to Sweden to punish
Yes.
Sweden for burning Qurans. And
They're,
it's
they're
like,
coming after us, man.
well, it's like to get to Sweden, you're going to have to go through a NATO country, which means you're going to take on all of NATO over Quran burning. I don't know. It's
By the way, I have to tell you this. I have, and you know it, hundreds of Muslim friends. Not one of them would kill or die over the burning of a book.
well, and I would never burn a
Not one.
Quran. It's stupid.
No, I would never burn any book. I have a problem every time I have a piece of shit book I don't want. I can't throw it away. Never
Yeah,
mind
no,
burning it. I have to find a library that would accept it. But the
no.
point is, most Muslims will not go to war over this shit. A handful of fanatics or crazy mothers like Kadyrov might. Eh,
Well,
I won't go to war over a burning of a Bible. I think
no.
it's stupid, disgusting even. Eh, but in in
Okay,
in in my disgust is really no worse than burning a copy of The Little Prince.
no. The singer Sinead O'Connor died recently, and Sinead
Yes.
was a disaster from beginning to end. She never improved on any level. She declared herself a Catholic priest. She declared herself Jewish. She declared herself a Muslim. Just anything to be provocative. And
Yes.
what killed her career is that she, on maybe a Saturday Night Live, I don't know, she held up a picture of the Pope and said, "Fight the
Yep.
real enemy," and tore the picture in half. Well,
Yep.
that's a dumb thing to do. You're not hurting anyone but yourself. And
No.
to
He thought of it. She thought of that as protest against the buggery of children. Um, what led her tiny brain to imagine that that gesture would garner support? Uh, I have no idea. What she managed to do is offend millions.
well, also she herself was wildly inconsistent in that she constantly accused her mother of the most horrific abuse. She wrote songs about her. She wrote an album about her, and then she did everything she could to court her mother's love. She went on Dr. Phil and said, "The only thing I love about my mother is the fact that she's dead." But then I mean, and she had four children, and one of them, a boy, a male, was a dead ringer for her. He killed himself with a drug overdose, and she wrote the most demented stuff, treating it as if her husband had died, talking about how he
Hmm.
was her soulmate and all this stuff. She had three other children, and she herself died. I don't know if the cause of death has been established or released or whatever, but she was only 56.
Yep.
And it was just she had a hell of a talent. She was a magnificent singer. She was a magnificent writer. But it didn't mean anything to her because she was wallowing in something. And it's like, okay, if your mother is, and the church and all of that, if it's so horrible that it's destroyed your life, why are you constantly trying to get back into its good graces? It doesn't make sense.
Stockholm syndrome.
Well, the goal of somebody, let's say you've been massively abused by a parent or both parents or whatever, the goal is to figure out how to make the best life for yourself. And constantly chasing after people who are, they haven't changed at all. You know, they will never acknowledge what they did to you is wrong or whatever. And this notion that you're going to try and tell them, you wrecked me. What if they don't care? What if they're incapable of caring? What if they just
the best tool that a person has, and these, I must confess, I am speaking from ignorance, because I never suffered situations like the ones we are discussing. So somebody would be perfectly right to say, "What the fuck are you talking about? You don't know how this is." But I read a lot. I read a lot about psychology, psychiatry, and I have a little bit of experience dealing with people who have gone through that. And frankly, the best tool to show off a parent, a teacher, somebody with influence over you that mistreated you in your youth as you were growing up is to excel at what you do and never acknowledge them.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the biggest fuck you that you can come up with.
Well,
But this thing, oh, well, she was terrible, but I love her. She was, but give me a break.
Or
this
just
is like a bad novel.
People who spend their entire lives raising their middle finger to their parents. And it's like, but you're 56 years old. I mean,
yeah,
you've allowed. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that everything Sinead O'Connor said was true. Well, you've now allowed your mother to like destroy you from beyond the grave to the point where you're going to go to your grave early. And you know, it's to me the best revenge is indifference, where you neither love nor hate. You're just, you know, doing your own thing. And okay, I mean, I told you I knew a guy. He turned out to be a lot of trouble, but he would just tell me every time he called, he'd tell me about how abusive his mother was, to the point where it was just like, I mean, I ended up speaking to her. She called me once to tell me that he was in the hospital. I picked up the phone and this woman's like screaming at me, like trying to get into a fight with me. I had no idea who she was, but then a little light bulb went on, and I realized it was his mother. So I was just like the nicest, sweetest guy, and I didn't rise to the occasion because her MO is that she picks fights with everybody.
Right.
And finally, just once after just, you know, tale of woe and woe, he's living with her, 38 years old, living with his mommy. I said, look, why are you doing this on a daily basis? Why are you interacting with her? You're telling me you know what's going to happen, and you know, it's just. And he said, well, she's my only mother, so of course I love her. And I was just like, okay, fine.
Yeah. I think Sarah Bangas is correct. They never grow up, and they use their past to justify their failed lives.
Yeah.
It fits. Speaking of, you know, never growing up and using the past to justify their miseries, I think a poster child for that is Vladimir Putin.
Definitely.
Yes, he has a short dick complex. You know, that explains his naked torso on horseback and all that, just to show how macho he is. See if he can convince himself, perhaps.
Well,
And,
also, he's a self-proclaimed black belt in judo.
yes,
you know,
he's a black eye in judo.
Well, I mean, do you think anyone's ever going to let him, you know, or is anyone in Russia is ever going to defeat him? Of course not. They're going to go, oh, ow, ooh,
Well,
ow.
no, if they are free to do it, I think there are some 17-year-olds who can kick his ass all the way to Siberia.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, the Russians, I'm okay. I watch a lot of movies. I have a couple of streaming, and when I watch these movies about the Russian mafia and the Russian military and this whole like implacable, indestructible strength and power, you know, whether it's the Soviets or the Russians under Putin, I look at all that now and I just think this is so dumb. This is just so, I mean, I can't. There's a movie called Eastern Promises by David Cronenberg about the Russian mafia.
Yes.
And they just strike me as a bunch of twerps. They're supposed to be all scary. Ooh, they're coming after you. And they just strike me as twerps. I mean, and I don't know, it's like that, or The Equalizer, or any movie where somebody's fighting the Russian mafia.
John Wick.
Yeah, okay. Well, the Spetsnaz. I remember I used to know a Navy SEAL, and he said the Spetsnaz are damn lucky that they never had to fight Americans.
Yes, true.
Because they put on these demonstrations where they do flips over tables and they throw an axe down at the table as they're doing flips, or they carry a giant table in their teeth, and it's, you know, sticking out in the air. And it's like, but what about learning how to fight? What about honing your combat skills? What about that?
Well, no, they can't fight, but they sure as hell can throw an axe.
Well, this is the thing. This is why, okay, I heard today that the Ukrainians are finally using the Challengers in their race to Mariupol. They
Yes.
absolutely blasted through this minefield. Nobody's quite sure how they did it. They did it very quickly, and they're pouring in the reserves. So
Yep, the 82nd is coming into the Zaporizhia front.
they've also trained up units that nobody knew were being trained. For example, they basically created their own version of the special boat service, and they set up this. They crossed the Dnipro River and set up this very large beachhead on the eastern side of the Dnipro River.
Yes, in
And
Kherson.
these were people trained by the British. The special boat service is the naval or the water equivalent of the special air service. And so these Ukrainians were trained up to that level, and they've released footage, and it's like, holy, wow.
Yep, and there is a video, I don't know if I got a link to show you, of Germans telling people how basically fast the Ukrainians got up to par with the German tanks.
Yep.
That usually training that takes up to 6 weeks. These people were, let's say, up to par in 1 week.
Yeah. No, we've been training, or we and the Europeans have been training the Ukrainian pilots on the F-16 for what, 3 months now, give or take.
Give or take, that I know of, about 3 months, and of course, I know it makes you laugh too, because now we know that the U.S. is authorized delivery and authorized training that has been going on for a while. And the Ukrainians say, oh, well, but if you do it now, thank you very much, but we won't be able to put it into service until next summer. Bullshit. In 2 months, they're going to be flying because the crews are already trained.
Even less. I mean, I saw a video of Ukrainians testing a flamethrower, a man-portable flamethrower for use in trench warfare. So, I've been thinking that for a long time, that they're doing trench clearing. The flamethrower is ideal because it's more of a psychological weapon.
Yes.
The Russians
And in trench warfare, because you've studied this at length, the psychological effect of flamethrowers in trenches is devastating.
Yeah. A lot of German-made Leopard 1 tanks. That means a lot of training for Ukrainian tankers. Not on the Leopard 1. Not on the Leopard 1.
Not anymore. But you
Yeah.
see, this was published August 18.
Yeah.
August 18. You know how many Leopard 1s are in operation in Ukraine today? 180.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what's the deal?
These are all information operations, and the press are obediently printing what they're being fed. The Ukrainians are doing the Sun Tzu thing of, all warfare is based on deception. That when you're
Yes.
strong, pretend you're weak. And so, unfortunately, our people, the people on our side who oppose Ukraine for whatever reason, they take all this stuff at face value. They can't win. The Russians are gonna.
I'll give you an example of that.
West wobbles as spring counteroffensive stalls.
West wobbles?
Yeah, we just okayed F-16s. What do you mean?
On the day we okay F-16s, the Germans double up on artillery. The Brits, up the ante on both training and equipment. The Italians are planning on the reconstruction of Ukraine after Russia is kicked out of Crimea. The West is wobbling.
Yeah. No, I mean, the Ukrainians are hitting. They're hitting Moscow on a nightly basis.
Yes.
Moscow City was evacuated a couple of nights ago.
Yes. Let's. For people listening, that is not the city of Moscow. This is Moscow City, which is like the city of London.
Yeah,
it's an area with high rises in Moscow, but it's not the whole city of Moscow.
Yeah, it's where all the rich, young, all the Russian yuppies live.
Yeah.
And okay, Putin. They're now going to try and draft up to 2 million people, 2 million men to make up for the losses. Because if you count the wounded and the dead, the Russians have lost about 1 million in Ukraine. So they're going to try and make up for it with 2 million. Just before I point out the obvious there, you remember there was a general of paratroopers who got put on leave because he complained that he wasn't getting enough weaponry and materials in the Donbass. They took him out, and then the Ukrainians advanced past the first defense. They advanced past the fortifications. So the Russians sent the paratrooper general back to work. They gave him all the most modern equipment, and he just launched 2 separate assaults, and they both got annihilated. The Russians lost. They lost about a dozen T-90M tanks, which are the best that the Russians have.
Yeah, supposedly the best tank in the world. You have no idea how good it is. It's a tank that can kill all tanks. It's the greatest tank. Boom, no more tank.
Yeah. Well, I saw a video.
Come on.
I saw a video that the Russians put out. It was a propaganda video. It was obviously not a T-90 in combat. But, okay, the Russian tanks have a 3-man crew. They have a commander, a gunner, and a driver, and then it's got an automatic loader. And the loader loaded, and then the commander ordered the gunner to fire, It fired, and then the turret filled with smoke. Now,
Yeah.
they have all these screens, these digital screens, and it's supposed to be very impressive. They don't have an efficient fume extractor. So
No.
there was so much smoke inside that the men couldn't see, and they were breathing it all in because they didn't have gas masks on. So just to make sure that I wasn't completely insane, I looked up videos taken inside German Leopard 2 tanks and French Leclerc tanks and the Korean K2 tank. And
They're like SUVs.
yeah. And when those things fire, there's no smoke inside the turret because the fume extractor, which is the thick, if you look at a tank barrel, there's a thick part. It looks like a big long can.
Yes.
Thing is sucking the gas and smoke and fumes out, and it's pumping it out the front of the barrel after the shot. And the Russian T-90, which is the best of the best, except for the T-14, which doesn't exist, they fired, and their turret filled with smoke. That's crazy.
Yeah, I know. And now, by the way, if you want to escape the smoke, they're building parrot cages on top of the tank to make sure nobody gets the fuck out.
Yeah. Why don't they just weld them inside the tank and be done with it?
You just chain the poor suckers into the tank.
Yeah.
It's insane. These people are, but then again, when the hell did the Russians have the smallest consideration for the lives of their population, their soldiers, or the enemy?
Never.
It doesn't matter. They don't care for their own lives.
The Ukrainians just released a video of a Russian mother who was allowed to go to Ukraine and see her son who'd been taken prisoner. And she was an emotional mess, as you could imagine. And he was trying to be all stoic, and eventually he wasn't able to keep up with it. But you know, he looked healthy. He was wearing a new uniform provided by the Ukrainians. It didn't have a Ukrainian flag, of course. It was just they're being taken care of. They're allowed to work if they want. They're provided food. They're provided. The only thing is that they're required to be disciplined. So what they sit at tables with a set number of people, and they're not allowed to start eating. They're to remain standing until all the men have joined the table. They sit down. They can talk, but you know they have to be disciplined. They have to put their own trays away. They have to. There's people washing them who are being paid to wash. People cooking who are being paid to cook. So they're being trained in discipline, and the Russian military is one of the least disciplined armed forces on the face of the earth. One of the reasons the Ukrainians are being so successful in the South is because at least half the soldiers are drunk all the time.
Yeah. Remember the complaints of the town folk in Belarus when they were preparing the invasion?
Yeah.
That all of these Russian soldiers were out there selling the diesel from their tanks to buy vodka and were drunk all the time and harassing women and all that jazz. And then they got on their tanks, they marched in Ukraine, and they ran out of gas in 20 miles.
Yeah.
And by the way, in the South, there are areas of the South where they're being routed.
Say it again. Where what?
There are areas in Zaporizhia where the Russian army is being routed.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Literally.
Yeah.
They're running away. They're abandoning equipment, running on foot. And I've seen some videos of Ukrainian artillery actually hitting because when these idiots run, instead of dispersing, they run as a pack.
Yeah. So they're hit with
they're hit with one cluster bomb, and the whole unit is playing the balalaika on a cloud.
Yep.
It's but then again, that's training. I mean, what leads them to run away in that fashion? That they were never trained on how to do it. Because yes, when you receive military training, you are trained on how to evacuate, how to withdraw, how how to
The
hit the road before they hit you.
Okay, do you remember in the first Gulf War, there was all this horseshit about the highway of death, where the Iraqis
Oh
were
yeah,
they were leaving Kuwait, and
Kuwait.
we mercilessly bombed them. Reporters on the ground reported that there were something like maybe a dozen bodies, and it's very easy to see why. The aircraft bombed the vehicles in the front and the vehicles behind. And the Iraqis did not sit in their trucks going, oh, oh.
Oh
They jumped
shit!
out and they ran into the desert. And the pilots said that they conducted a fighting retreat. They were shooting at the aircraft with anti aircraft cannons and everything. So it wasn't the highway of death. We destroyed the vehicles, and
Yes,
there were like a dozen burnt bodies that were very photogenic for the reporters to put out the report that we were the bad guys. And those dozen bodies, were photographed from multiple angles. And if you look at footage of the destruction, you don't see any human bodies. There's no bodies in the cars. There's no bodies in the desert. There's no nothing, because they jumped out of their vehicles and they got the hell out of Dodge. They're not idiots.
no,
But
no. But the Russians are.
yeah, no, and like you
By
said,
the way, let me take this moment to bid adieu to our viewers in YouTube. I already put a link on the chat in YouTube. If you want to see the rest of this show, come over to Odyssey, and God forbid, maybe even contribute to the show as well. Um, bye bye, YouTube. You've had enough today. And there we go.